On July 21st, I leave Khaplu and head deeper into the mountains toward Hushe Valley. This is one of the most remote and spectacular regions of Baltistan. The road follows the river closely from the very beginning. Here, it is the Hushe River, fed by glaciers high in the Karakoram. Unlike calmer valley rivers, this one moves with force. Fast, cold, and full of sediment from the mountains above. Its power is constant, and it shapes everything around it. The valley itself narrows as I continue. Steep slopes rise on both sides, and the road winds its way through a landscape carved over thousands of years by ice and water, one of the most rugged mountain systems in the world. Some of the highest and most difficult peaks on Earth lie beyond these valleys, including Masherbrum and the famous cluster of peaks around Concordia. Hushe is known as one of the main gateway villages for expeditions heading toward these mountains. From here, trekkers and climbers begin their journeys toward glaciers and peaks that are among the most remote anywhere on the planet. But even without going that far, the scale of the landscape is already overwhelming. The river below, constantly in motion, the mountains above rising sharply into the sky, and the road, at times narrow and uneven, following the only possible path through the valley. As I ride, I pass small settlements, clusters of houses built along the limited flat land beside the river. Agriculture here depends entirely on glacial meltwater. Fields are carefully cultivated in narrow strips wherever water can be directed. This pattern has existed here for centuries, life shaped by the constraints of altitude, climate, and terrain. Historically, this region was part of Baltistan, which maintained strong cultural and trade connections with Ladakh and Tibet. The Balti language still spoken here reflects these ties. It is a Tibetan language adapted over time but still clearly connected to that broader world. As I continue toward Hushe, the valley becomes even more dramatic. The river cuts deeper, the road becomes rougher in sections, and the sense of isolation increases. There are fewer signs of outside influence, fewer vehicles, and long stretches where it is just the landscape. The sound of the river, always present, the movement of water, always visible. By the time I reach Hushe, it feels like arriving at the edge of something, not just geographically, but in terms of access. Beyond this point, the road ends, and the high Karakoram begins in its most raw and untouched form. Looking back on the journey, what stands out most is the relationship between the river and the land. The river gives life, but it also defines the limits. It determines where people can live, where roads can be built, and how this valley continues to exist. And riding alongside it, you feel that presence every moment of the way. One thing that stands out here is the color of the river. It is not clear blue, but a milky gray. This comes from glacial silt, finely ground rock, carried down from the glaciers above. Over time, this sediment will travel all the way down the Indus system, eventually reaching the Arabian Sea. Another detail becomes noticeable the further I ride. There are very few trees at higher elevations. The landscape becomes more exposed, more dependent on water and altitude. Where there is irrigation, there is green. Where there is none, the land returns to bare rock. In places, the road feels almost provisional, as if it could disappear with the next landslide or heavy rain. This is not a fixed piece of infrastructure. It is something that has to be constantly rebuilt and maintained. There is also a sense of scale that is difficult to capture. The mountains here are not just high. They rise almost directly from the valley floor, creating an immediate vertical presence. It is this steep relief that defines the Karakoram. You also begin to notice how isolated each settlement is. Even though they are connected by the same road, each village feels self-contained. Supplies, water, and agriculture are all locally managed. The outside world feels distant. And then there is the silence. Aside from the river, there is very little sound. No traffic noise, no crowds, just wind, water, and the occasional human activity. It creates a different rhythm, one that is slower but also more grounded. Finally, there is a sense that this is a threshold. Beyond Hushe there are no more roads, only trekking routes leading towards some of the highest and most remote mountains in the world. It is the point where travel by vehicle ends and the high Karakoram truly begins.